Great. So now we've got one brick. Okay. Now I want to go ahead and make a copy of my red brick so I can build out my green brick. Okay. Um, I am, let's see, how best to do this? I think that what we should do is we should copy the red brick or this like square brick and then actually move that one into a new position. We'll move it up and kind of like over like this. And then we'll take the one that's still sitting at our origin and just add this little curve to it. So that makes sense to me. Okay. I think it'll make sense to you too in a minute. So I want to be really precise with the way that I'm copy and pasting my bricks. I want to make sure that they're perfectly aligned because, you know, these Duplos, these little Legos, they are really, really precise in the way that they snap into each other. And we want to be cognizant of that and try to get it also very precise. So I'm going to, I'm just going to copy, Control C, and then I'll paste, Control V. And I've copy and pasted my objects. And now when I go to click on it, I'll get this little selection menu pop up. And I'll see that I have two poly surfaces that I can select. Right now they look identical, but I'll grab one. And then, do you see these little arrows and stuff that's been kind of hovering in here while I've been working? This is something called a gumball, and it's really handy for manipulating either loosely or more aggressively, like the positions of an object. So I can click and drag, for example, that blue arrow and pull this box up and down. I can grab the red arrow and move it to the side. You'll see these little boxes right here. Those will move it along two planes at once. So for example, this will move me along my blue and green arrows at the same time. Nice. Great. So I'm just going to Control Z that a couple times. Okay, so I've got two identical bricks here. I'm going to grab one. And then I think that I'm going to move, let's see, I'll move to my right view. And I'm going to type in the move command. I'm going to move it so that like the bottom of this brick is perfectly aligned with the top of the other. So I'll type in move, enter, and it'll say point to move from. I'm going to hover, let's see, I'll hover right here on the end, click, and then I'll move it up. And then when it says end again, I'll click. And now I've got, and I can see from my wireframe in here, I can see that I've got two identical bricks, one stacked on top of each other. And if I move back to my perspective view, it looks like I just took two of these bricks and snapped them together, right? So now what I want to do, I'm going to go to my right view. I'll click on the box on top, and I'm going to move it, move, enter. We'll say point to move from. I'll click the end again. Now I'm going to hold down shift. And then when it says mid right there, see how that mid popped up? Click again. And I'm going to check it in my perspective view. Sometimes it'll get like a little funky, like it'll snap to something that you think it's snapping to the right thing, but it's actually snapping to the wrong thing. So you'll always want to just like double check in your perspective view that it did in fact like snap to where you wanted it. Okay, so now I have my two bricks offset from one another. And this is the one that's going to be on top, right? But I also have this green brick that's on the bottom here. And it has this little curve happening in here. I know already that my bricks are, like if I were to draw a little line right here, this side onward, they're identical. This is where we run into some difficulty, or I should say some nuance here. And again, we're not counting the interior. That's going to be something different. But from here on, identical. From here on, some nuance. So I know that this length from here to here is the same as this length. It is at 3/4 of an inch, right? And I know that the total length of my brick, this little rectangle guy here, is 1 1/4. So extend that down. This is 1 1/4 of an inch, which means that whatever is left over, in other words, 1 7/8 minus 1 1/4, or which is 1 2/4, is the remaining length here. So that is going to be, that total length is 1 5/8 of an inch, which, as you might notice, 5/8 of an inch is not the same as 3/4 of an inch, which means this is slightly shorter than this. Okay, why does that matter? Because while we're modeling in here, we want to make sure that we're getting everything accurate. So I want to just focus on this brick for now. I don't want to worry about this guy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click the middle button of my scroll wheel. I'm going to come over here to my light bulb, and I'm going to hide this object. I want to make sure that it's selected first, but then I'll just, click that scroll wheel, come over here to hide objects, and now it's gone. If I want to bring it back, I can click on the scroll wheel again and right-click on that light bulb to bring it back. If you are not using a scroll wheel, you can also come up here at the top, click on Standard, and your light bulb option is right here. So I'm going to click on this, hide it. Now I'm just working with this one brick. Okay, so what I want to do here is I think that I'm going to make like this sort of half dome shape. I'll build this out. And I'm going to have it intersect with this shape right here. So let me just make sure that I'm drawing on the right corner. So I want to be on this edge. I want to be on, what is that? That is my front view. I want to be on my front view, making that manipulation. So I'm going to turn this off. Okay. This is the face that I want to build that little arch out of. There's a few ways that I can do this, but I think that actually, you know what? I think that the best way to do this is going to be to build out my bottom surface to this total length here. This, what is this? 1 7/8 of an inch. I'll build that out. And I'll get rid of this surface and draw an arch connecting. Yeah, I think that'll work nicely. Okay, so what I want to do is the first thing that I want to do here is I'm going to select just this face. Now you'll notice that if I click on the whole object, or I'm sorry, if I just go ahead and left click, I get the whole object. I want to hold down Control and Shift. Again, that's Control and Shift. And you'll notice that lets me select individual faces or even individual curves. So like just this line in between these two different faces. I'm going to just click on this face. So I'm holding down Control and Shift, click, and it gets highlighted. And I'm just going to hit backspace and delete it. Now I can see like the hollow inside of this object. It's now an open object. It's no longer a solid. But that's okay. We're going to edit this just a little bit and make some manipulation. So I want to make this bottom plane, this one right here, I want to turn it from being 1 1/4 inches to 1 7/8 inches, which means that I basically need to take this line and move it that little 5/8 of an inch that way, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that Control Shift. I'm going to click on this line. And I see my gumball pops up, right? Like I've got just that little line selected. That's just that edge of that one surface. And I want to move it out this way. And I want to move it out a very specific direction, right? I could click and drag on this arrow here. But I think that instead of just clicking and dragging on it, and you know what? It's currently tied, actually. Actually, that's what I'm going to do instead. So it's currently tied. You'll see if I move it this way, right, it pulls these lines too. And in some cases that can be really helpful, like if we want to manipulate our object that way. But I just want to extend this surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this little ball instead of my arrow. I have a little ball on each of these guys. And that ball is going to, instead of letting me just move where that current line is, it's going to let me extrude. So watch what happens when I pull on this. It extrudes outward, right? It basically takes where that current line is and it stretches it out. Cool. I don't just want to stretch it out any old direction. I want to stretch it out, or I'm sorry, not any old direction, any old length. I want it a very specific length. I want it to move 5/8 of an inch that way. So instead of clicking and dragging, I'm just going to click on that ball. And I'll get this little window popping up. I'm going to type in, well, first I'm going to type in, I'll show you guys, if I type in 5/8 of an inch, right, and I hit enter, it moves it that way. And the reason why is because it moves along the direction of the arrows, right? That's my positive direction. But I can move in negative numbers too. Remember, we're on like a 4-quadrant grid. So I'll Control Z this, click on this edge again. I'll click on the ball to extrude it. And this time I'm going to go negative 5/8 of an inch. So I'll hit enter. And now I have this new extrusion, right? And I can see that it like stretches out all that way. I have a new problem though, which is that this object and this object are not joined to one another, right? They're disconnected. If I click on this, it counts as a different object, and I want them to be connected. So what I can do is I can hold down Shift, click on both of them, and then I'm just going to type in the join command. Join, join, hit enter, and it basically what that does is it finds where there are open edges that touch each other, in this case, that open edge along the bottom surface and this open edge, and it connects them. So now if I click, it's all one object. Pretty easy. Okay. Now I want to create this arch, right? I can create that arch and then I'll be able to basically do that extrusion again. We'll see. You'll see. It's going to be super easy. Okay. I'm going to go to my, let's see, to my right view. I'll go to my right view and I can see that I've got like the edge of that platform kind of sticking out there on the bottom, which means that this is my open edge. This is where I want to draw that arc. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move from my surface tools over here to my curve tools. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to draw an arc, and then I'm going to manipulate the arc so that it starts here and ends here. So I'm going to come over here to my arc, or you can, of course, type in the word arc. And it's going to ask me, all right, where do you want the middle of that arc? I'm going to hover over this little endpoint here, basically where this line and this line meet. Hover over it. And I'm going to slide my cursor up until I get that end at the end of the brick. And I'm just going to pull this down. You can hold down Shift to lock it to 90 degrees. Pull down. All right, so now I've got a perfect arc, right? It's like basically a quarter of a circle. And that's a problem because I don't want it to be a perfect quarter of a circle. I need it to come in a little bit closer and land right there, right? I need the end of the arc to end right there. You notice when I click on that arc, I have 1, 2, 3 points active, right? In addition to my little gumball. They're invisible when I don't have the arc active, but when I do have it active, I can see them. That's because these 3 points together make up the arc. So this is where it starts, this is where it ends, and it's basically pulled out into that curve by this point right here. And you'll see that if I move this point around, I can kind of manipulate the shape of the arc, right? But the problem isn't just this point right here, it's this point. I specifically want to take this point, and I want to move them inwards so that they perfectly align with the end of this surface. So how am I going to do that? The same way that I selected and moved, you know, that like little line here to make this platform, I can do it the same way, like this. So we have our arc, we have different components of our arcs. We have a point here, a point here, and a point here. I'm going to, now that I've got it selected, I clicked on it, now I can see these points, so I can Control, Shift, and click on individual points. I grab these two off to the side. I've got this one on top, the one that's kind of like off the center of the arc, and then I've got this one, which is the bottom edge, the one that's floating out here. And I'm going to type in the move command, M-O-V-E, I'll move, enter. And I want to start the movement. I want to move it from this endpoint right here, and I want them to move until they're aligned with this endpoint. And now, at least from my right view, I've got a perfectly lined up arc. Let's see what happens when we go into perspective. Okay, so we've got part of that curve there, right? But now, I don't just want it to be like a regular curve, right? I want it to, like a curve floating in space, I want it to be a, like, I want it to extrude or like create that curved surface all the way along the edge of this brick. How am I going to do that? I'm going to click on that extrude ball again. And this time, instead of negative 5/8, I'm just going to go negative. Remember, I'm going negative because the positive direction is this way. I'm going to go negative 1.75 inches, right? Whoops. I think it's actually negative 0.125. I went a little too far there. My apologies. Enter. Okay. And now I've got this arc. It's a fully extruded arc. It went out, perfectly out that way. And I know because I set it to be the same length. I know that it perfectly lines up with this edge and perfectly lines up with this edge. So now I can hold down Shift, click on both of these objects, select them, and I can once again hit join. And now they're connected. But I still have these open like loops in here, right? I've still got an open surface and an open surface. I type in cap. I select the object and I said cap. It basically finds, it doesn't always work, but it finds very basic open faces like it did there, and it joins them together. And then you might get two, actually let's do that again just to see what happens there. So do you see where if I type in cap again, CAP cap, it says select objects to cap, and then right here it says delete input equals no. That means that when I select an object and I want to add a cap to it, it's not going to delete my original. So if I do that, if I select it and I hit enter, I now have two objects here. I have one that's capped and one that's not. Sometimes it's helpful for if you're not sure like how your results are going to come out, or if you're still ideating or whatever, maybe I want to manipulate the shape a little bit more. But in my case, I'm okay with it. Like I'm happy with how it's turning out. So I can just type in cap, enter. And then where it says delete input, I'll click on it and it'll change to yes. Now I click on this object, and now I only have the one object. Great. Okay, so if I turn on my hidden objects, now at least from the top, I have something that looks pretty good. It looks a lot like this guy, right?